Welcome to the Dyslexia Mom Life Podcast, your go-to podcast for dyslexia education and community. As moms, we want the best for our children, and when you're raising a child with dyslexia, that journey comes with unique twists and turns. Each week, we dive into dyslexia topics along with episodes on how to thrive in your dyslexia season as a mom, all with the goal of helping your child and your family thrive. Tune in for conversations that will inspire, inform, and connect you with a community that truly understands. You are not alone. We're in this together. Subscribe now and join in the conversation and community. You got this. Hey, friend. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dyslexia Mom Life Podcast. I am so glad that you're here with me today. And today I am sharing a very interesting and important topic, which is icebergs. So at first listen, you may think an iceberg, but I'm not talking about the iceberg from Titanic. I'm not talking about the situation with Jack and Rose and how they got off that ship. But what I am talking about is, how does that iceberg impact your dyslexia journey? When I think about an iceberg, it really is a great way to visualize dyslexia. And if we were on video, I could show you one and exactly what I'm talking about. If you do put in a search, though, for iceberg and dyslexia, you'll see lots of examples that people have created over the years as it relates to the visualization of an iceberg and dyslexia. When you think about that, though, you think about with an iceberg, you have the visual that's above the water, and then you have the pieces that are below the water, right? And above the water, you see that visual part. These are the things that we see or that we experience with our children, which is that difficulty to read, to spell, to write, and for some, mathematics or a slower processing speed. That's what most of us recognize when we think about dyslexia. But have you thought about what is below the surface? It's a whole range of cognitive differences that could affect memory, processing speed, organization, and even self-esteem. So these hidden struggles can impact a person's entire life, not just in school, but in work, relationships, and everyday tasks. So as a parent raising a child with dyslexia, it's important to realize that the areas you do not see can impact your child and family on a daily basis. If you don't recognize the areas under the iceberg, then you may look up one day and see you have hit the iceberg and not have a boat or a plan to get you out without having your own Titanic moment. And whether you were rooting for Jack or Rose in the Titanic, I'm rooting for you the entire way, all through your dyslexia journey. I will be taking a deep dive into dyslexia, what lies below the surface. So as we think about some of the pieces that are below the water and the pieces of the iceberg that not everyone sees, let's call those hidden challenges. So what are some of these hidden challenges for a child with dyslexia? There's a few. I'm going to run through those and then unpack those a bit for you. One is processing speed and working memory. The second is a phonological awareness. The third is organization and time management. The fourth is emotional toll. And then the fifth is social struggles. So let's dive into each one of those, if you will. So let's start off with processing speed and working memory. That's something that we don't see other than in the work that students are turning in or that your child may be struggling with. So people with dyslexia often take longer to process information. So it makes it hard to follow a fast-paced conversation or instructions. So when you're giving instructions at home or asking your children to do things, if you're giving them multiple steps at once, it's hard for them sometimes to process those and to have a working memory to realize that what you asked an hour ago, they've already forgotten. And so it's very hard in class too, when teachers are giving lectures and they're talking and they're expounding on what's on the board or what's in the notes. And as they continue to have those fast-paced conversations or instructions, on multi-step instructions in class, many times students get lost. So when your child gets home from a long day at school, she may be mentally exhausted. As your child gets older, the entire day requires a level of reading and focus that will be difficult most, if not every day. So it really does wear down during the day, as far as just having that working memory and that processing speed can really impact the work and remembering what that work is. The phonological awareness piece, that is what we've talked about in previous episodes, which is decoding words. And decoding words can take extra effort and time. Your child is, especially while they're being remediated, and even sometimes after, the, they're looking at each word in isolation and then trying to put all those together to make sense out of the sentence and the passage that they're reading. So if your child has not been remediated, then he does not have those tools required to decode the words. And as your child gets older and the focus changes from learning to read to reading to learn, your child will experience challenges and will definitely experience roadblocks along the way. When you know your child is struggling to learn to read, it is imperative that you find a tutor and school curriculum to support your child's remediation, and making sure that those are techniques and strategies that have been successful for dyslexics. And so you may hear people say, well, yes, I've taught reading for a number of years, but have you taught dyslexics how to read? It's a little bit different skill set there. So we've talked about that in other episodes as well. And I will leave some of those links in the show notes so that you can go back if you're interested in more of those pieces as well. The next one is organization and time management. So keeping track of schedules and deadlines, or even remembering where your child has left their homework, can be challenging. So as parents, we often forget that our child struggles in these areas. It's important for your child's success and their self-esteem that you work with your son or daughter to figure out systems that work best to keep him or her organized. So, I'm not going to date myself, but yeah, I probably am. When I was in school, you had the hard copy agendas, right? Like notebooks, you had agenda notebooks. But now our students and our children have so many more options, whether they're using that pen and paper type organizer or agenda, whether they're using a one sheet that maybe your school is using to keep their week organized. In our previous school, they even used Google Docs, and they created a weekly spreadsheet so students could see what is due each day, what the topics were, links to the assignments. It had a lot of information there for students when they needed to reflect back on something. Some students are using Google Calendars or other calendars on their phones. Some students are using Trello boards. Just lots of different opportunities that our children can use to try to stay organized, but we have to help them navigate and try those different methods so that they can figure out what works best for them. Because what works best for them may not work best for you. So we have to give them the opportunity to find what works for them. Many times schools are doing this and providing that opportunity. You may hear some people say that they have an executive functioning study hall. And the executive functioning pieces are the pieces of organization and time management. And so keeping those schedules, helping your child when they're working on a big project, and helping them to provide those in smaller chunks so everything doesn't happen at the same time. I can remember a story that my daughter does not like us to tell, which is where at one point in time she had to physically make a piano for class. And I can remember that we kept saying, hey, are you starting on this? And it ended up getting to crunch time, and that last night was so stressful, trying to get all the pieces together, making sure she had everything and all the materials and the paint and having time for it to dry. And so now we tell her all the time, like, this is not another piano, situation. So, you'll have your own stories along the way as far as, realizing as a parent, how can I help my child be more successful? And so that piano story has helped us as a family, because we're always like, hey, let's think out what do you have going on this week or this month, and how can we help her to navigate through those pieces and help her figure out that time management piece. Another big piece or challenge that you will see underneath the iceberg, if you will, is the emotional toll that it takes on your child and your family, to be honest. The anxiety, the frustration, the low self-esteem often develops due to the years of struggling in a system that isn't built for neurodiversity. So our traditional public schools were not created for the neurodiversity mindset or the way that our children think. And many times it's seen as a negative when we know it's actually a positive, but we have to figure out ways to help our children learn. I can remember a few years ago, we were helping our daughter's dyslexia school with a fundraiser. And part of the fundraiser was that students could put their personal stories out on social media to get family and friends to donate. They did a little friendly competition among the students. And so my husband's a film teacher, and so he was helping the students with their short little testimonial. And it was very eye-opening for the students who I guess, identified, I guess is the best way to say that, later in their elementary education, and the levels of anxiety and frustration and the low self-esteem and the things that they can remember happening around them and how they felt about themselves was really heavy, even though they were now in a place that was 100% supportive, right? Very supportive of their needs. They still had that emotional toll. It still was with them, and the anxiety around being different, right? All of those pieces. And then the final challenge that I'll share with you today is social struggles, and that goes right in from the emotional toll. It kind of works its way together. So for children who learn to read later in their school years, or maybe still struggling to learn to read, it can take a real toll, a real hardship on friendships and how other students see them. And so for some children, they withdraw socially and they don't want to speak up in class. They don't want to raise their hand. They don't want to ask for the accommodation that they need because they don't want to be seen as different from their friends and their peer group. It can be quite a struggle for them. So if you're not aware of these pieces that I just shared, it makes it difficult when you're navigating your dyslexia journey. And if you think about that iceberg image and you think about what's below the water, all these pieces, the time management, the emotional pieces, the social struggles, the trying to figure out how to decode words, the trying to stay on top of task and making sure they remember homework and when things are due, and that it takes them longer many times to actually do the assignments. It's not about that they can or can't do it or how successful they will be. It just sometimes takes them longer, some students longer, to really process all of those. So all of that is going on every day in your house. And you might not realize it, but those hidden challenges are there. They are there. Let's shift, though, for a few minutes to talk about some of the strengths. So although we know that the strengths are also a part of what makes our kids unique with dyslexia, it's a part that we don't talk about enough. And some of those are also hidden beneath the water. Your child's strengths are there. We just have to look for them. So I'm going to run through again a little list, and then we'll dive more into each one. So one is creativity, big picture thinking, problem solving and innovation, and empathy and resilience. Those are some of the strengths that you will see if you do any type of research around dyslexia, if you do research or even ask ChatGPT or ask Google, right, Mr. Google, to provide some names of some successful dyslexics. And it can be authors, it can be athletes or actors. Every different background you can think of, there are dyslexics there. So if your child resonates with a certain area, then look for that, because you'll definitely see that. But you'll see these themes throughout too. So let's start with the first one, which is creativity. There's some real strength there for people with dyslexia. They are incredible thinkers and very creative thinkers, and they often excel in art, music, design, and storytelling. It is how their brain thinks, and that's what makes them so unique. They see the world through a different lens. And as a parent, you have to find the opportunities for your child to thrive outside of reading. Ironically, though, our daughter spends most of her waking hours now in middle school reading. When she's not in class, she's reading. When there's time in between classes, she's reading. At home, on the weekends, at night, she's reading. So a little over 2 years ago, she realized and really fell in love with stories and storytelling, and realized I can now enjoy a book. But that was after many years of remediation and realizing that reading is beyond reading to learn. So that creativity is a big piece of that strength. But if we're so focused on the dyslexia piece, we might miss these other strengths, which is what makes our kids unique, but it also helps with the self-esteem and helps them feel good about themselves, and we want that. The other piece that's really unique to dyslexics is this big picture thinking. So instead of getting lost in the details, they see connections, they see patterns, they see things we don't see unless we're a dyslexic, right? Things that others might miss. That's why they make such great entrepreneurs, because they're able to see, and leaders, because they're able to see beyond just the things that have to be done. They see the bigger picture down the road. And complementing that is problem solving and innovation. So some of the greatest entrepreneurs and inventors and visionaries, like Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, Barbara Corcoran, the list goes on and on. They're problem solvers. and they're innovative. But how do they get there? Through the next strength, which is empathy and resilience. So overcoming challenges fosters a deep empathy for others and an ability to push through adversity. So in my work with parents raising children with dyslexia, I have met many parents who have shared that their children have a very high degree of empathy. And so as adults with dyslexia, research has proven that these individuals make the best managers and the best leaders because they have that strong empathy and they're able to literally see it on people when people are struggling either personally, professionally, and really connect with those individuals who are working for them. And so it makes them better leaders. And that resilience, as I said a few minutes ago, when you think about all of the challenges on a daily basis, all these hidden challenges that you may not be seeing, they're there. You may just not have known to pick those out. Every day gives them an opportunity to build that resilience muscle. And it's hard, right? It's not easy every day. And, when we think about there's different ways we can approach this iceberg. We can get educated or we can have our own Titanic moment, right? And I don't know about you, but looking up and running into a big iceberg is not the way I want to start my day and definitely not the way I want to end my day. So although at the beginning it seems like this world of dyslexia can be very overwhelming, and it is, it really is. But what I want you to think about when you think about what lies beneath and below the surface is there's a whole world there with your child, a whole place where they're having other struggles that you may not have on your radar, where there's great strengths and opportunities and gifts that you may not be seeing. And so I just challenge you to look beyond the reading and look at other areas that maybe your child needs you to lean in on and give help with, and also areas that you can provide opportunities for them to be successful and to really feel good about themselves. And really, the world is more than just one piece of us. And so sometimes we get really fixated, or if you will, or get really overwhelmed, might be the better word, on what is happening and how do I fix this? Because as a parent, we want our children to not necessarily be fixed, but we don't want them in pain. We don't want them to struggle. We want them to be happy and successful and enjoying life. And these years, during the dyslexia years and late elementary and middle and high, can be very challenging years for kids. And many moms that I've interviewed and spoken with that are on the other side of it said that these school years, these K through 12 school years, were tough years. But it also, like I said earlier, has on the other side of that has, provided us with some great minds and some great innovations that we would not have had without that. So, you're not alone. I'm here. There's a whole community here for you, and you got this. And I know you're going to do great things with your child. You just have to be there, and you're their biggest supporter, and they need you every day. So you may be thinking, so how do I change the way I look at dyslexia? Well, it's going to start with awareness, education, support, and then shifting your mindset, shifting your perspective about what does it look like to be raising a kid with dyslexia. So thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you found this helpful, I'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast and share this episode with friends. If you've got friends who are also struggling to figure these things out and they're asking you questions, then by all means, I would love for you to share this episode. If you're new to the journey of your child learning to read and remediating dyslexia, I would say go back and listen to episode 130, Understanding Your Child's Dyslexia Workshop. I'll also leave a link in the podcast description for you, so that way you can link right over and listen to that next. And remember, you are not alone. You got this.